All right, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. Yesterday, we left off with implementing 2 of the spells of the Skeleton Fire Mage, and today we have to do the other 4. Hope you all are excited, as I am, to have these new monsters be implemented today, so that we can finish up the mage monsters of the game. All right. So the next abilities we are implementing are called Blizzard and Freeze Ground. Blizzard has a 1.5 second cast time with 350 radius, so a little larger than the meteor we made last night. It lasts for 5 seconds, dealing 50 times percent attack damage per second. And the location is where the location where the mage is casting gets indicated. So it's kind of like we could think of it like kind of like a snowstorm, like a casted snowstorm, right? It'll be a location on the ground that just sprinkles down, I guess in this case, lots of snow, right? So we're gonna need to make some kind of effect for that. So I'm just thinking immediately in my head, like, just have a bunch of random spawned snow particles falling down, and then the area itself, of course, is indicated by some radius. So it will be circular, so we could probably do some kind of like just light blue circle area to indicate it, and then, yeah. So it deals 50% attack damage per second. I also think we'll need some kind of like blizzardy sounding sound effect. So we'll probably look for something like that, right? So I like to just go here to look for potential sound ideas. So looking for some kind of like blizzard spellcast soundy sound. A blizzard for 2. My headset is not... Okay. Well, that's a track. That is not really a sound effect. And let's see here. Walking on snow. I don't think that's what we want. That's more walking on snow. Snow and gravel footsteps. Walking. So this is all snow sounds, which is not really what we want. We're looking for more like, We're looking for more like weather-related sounds, right? Like some kind of like snowstorm, blizzard sound effect. Like what would that even sound like? Not really what I need. Also, it requires a license. I guess I should look for like a sound pack, like a weather related sound pack maybe? Let me go back here. Let's just look for like storm. Like if I could find some kind of like storm sound, that would be super nice, right? I'm just trying to think where else I might be able to find something like that. Can look on itch real quick. See if anything like that could potentially be useful. So let's do sound effects that potentially we could use. Where do I search within here? Because I think if I search up here, it will display other stuff. Let me just try it. Some kind of like Blizzard sound effect, right? That's really what we're looking for. Blizzard sound effect for $1. Well, I mean... They don't even have a preview. How am I supposed to know if this is what I need? Alright, well, I guess, like, what I'm really going for is, like, a Blizzard sound effect from, like, in Super Mario RPG, there is a Blizzard skill, and that's kind of what I'm going for. It's like, I think it's called Snowy or something. But yeah, I'm thinking of something kind of like that. I guess I could just go for a more like stormy sound effect for now, but I don't know. Anyway, let's not fixate too much on the sound effect, I guess. Let's get the actual effect going first. So I already have like a little circle sprite I can use for the snow falling down. We'll just make them various sizes and scale them, which is perfectly fine. And then we have to make a circle radius that appears for the actual snow. And obviously we're going to need a new effect called Blizzard or something like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and add in a new file. Now, I think most of the time I just inline these things, because if I inline them, then I won't have to actually write the implementation separated from the definition. So I will just use this as a template, kind of. But essentially what we're doing is we are creating our Blizzard using inline functions with the header effect.h having it defined for us. So if I go to the bottom here, I can add a brand new effect called the Blizzard effect. I'm just gonna call it Blizzard. The Blizzard will need a position where it gets casted. It will need a radius. It needs... and it needs a lifetime. I think those are the basics. So let's try that. So we'll do a const vf2d pause. A const... const float radius. And then a const... Oh, also, this is called Blizzard. const float lifetime. And this might actually be all we need for right now. In terms of the configuration variables for actual battles, I guess we need to know how much damage we're gonna do. So damage and damage tick speed. So tick speed or tick rate. Either will work fine. And I think that's it. I don't know why it says expecting a parenthesis, but it does say that for some reason. Update, we have the draw. We don't need any, well, ideally we store these, so I think effect has some things. So let's look at the effect. God, excuse me. My throat is so clogged. Pause, lifetime, image file, whether it's on the upper level, and the rest is just there. Okay, I mean, simple enough. And then in here, we'll have to define these three functions. So we'll go ahead and include effect. Whoa, what? I did not mean to do that. Oops. These are... Oh, that's interesting. In the other one, I just put struct black hole, colon, fade in out effect. So I didn't even put it in here. It's not even defined in here. I just used this header. Oh, that's interesting. Do I like that? I kind of like that. And I think it will work for our situation. So, yeah, if I just make these all inline, right? I can define them that way. These are overrides. I am clicking all the wrong things. I hate when multi-select does this. Thank you, multi-select. You are very unhelpful sometimes. Okay. So, for this, it just calls the parent constructor effect with pause, lifetime, the image file. So the image file will be set. We're just gonna make it a, I guess, a circle. And define the size based on the size of that circle. So we have some kind of like targeting circle here. Actually, I kind of want to use this one. But I could just use this, which would work. Aiming underscore target.png. Next is whether it's on the upper level or not. And I guess we would include that. Constable upper level. You can just substitute that in there. And then we have the size. So like I said, the size can be determined by whatever radius we provided. So in this example, if the aiming target has a normal size of 24 by 24 pixels, then whatever radius we specify, based on units, we'll have to scale it to that. So for every 100 units, that's supposed to be one tile, which is 24 by 24, but that image is a full circle, and this is the radius, so it's already only half. So we're basically making the size be double what we need it to be. So take the radius, divide it by 100, radius. So let's say it was 100, right? That keeps things simple. Then we would expect it to be the entire thing to be one entire tile of covered. So it should be 48 by 48 when it's 100. So it would be radius times 2 divided by 100 multiplied by 24. I think that's correct because it's 100, 200, 2 times 24 is 48, but then we divide by 24 because that's the image size. So that's how we get our scale. And we would apply that to both components of this vector, VF2D. So really, since we're doing the same operations over and over, one trick I like to do is to actually take whatever we're multiplying by, because this is for a VF2D, if you multiply a VF2D by another number, it applies it to both members by default. So we can make it look something like this. Just do 1 times whatever number we supply, and that will make it so we end up with applying to both members. Just a little trick. And that's fun. We can have a small fade out of maybe like half a second or so, nothing crazy. It's not gonna move. The color, we could do a little bit of... Actually, what I do want is additive blending. I think that would be excellent. But for the color blending, I think we just want some alpha. So we'll do like 255, 255, 255. Let's do 128, just half transparency. And actually, it will be blue. It'll be like this light blue color. Let's find a suitable color for this. Probably like, this is what I was imagining. So it'd be 199, 247, 239. 199, 247, 239. And then over here, after the color, I think is the additive blending argument. So that should be true, because I do want additive blending. No, that's the rotation. Rotation won't matter. Rotation speed is not a thing. And we provide additive blending, which I said I was going to do, and then I immediately type false. So that sets up the effect constructor. And now we can do any personal variables we might need. So the only ones I need to store now is the radius, damage, and tick rate. The rest are stored inside the effect class itself. So these will be public functions. And down here, we will have our private members, which include damage, tick rate, and radius. And we'll also need a tick timer. So we'll just have a timer for that. And then we're also going to have a timer for particles. So the way we're going to spawn particles is every few moments we will spawn like, what, 2 or 3 particles? But we also have, I think, a particle emitter. So let me take a quick look at that, because I think we can just reuse some code if we have an emitter for this. So we made an emitter for a lightning bolt, but that's not quite what we're looking for. We're looking for our own emitter. And the whole point of making an emitter is so it just spawns stuff for you repeatedly. But I don't see anything that would do that by default, so I'm gonna assume that that was the only one we actually had. But I know we've spawned like particle effects before, like yesterday, the firebolt, right? The firebolt spawned its own particles. It looks like we just created them with effect and you circle.png, which is very fair. I think that's a fine way to do it. I was just hoping we had a more programmer-friendly approach, I guess. But anyways, let's get these variables filled. It's nice to at least check up and see if there's something we can utilize before we make our own thing. Because surely if we've done this before, then we could do it again, right? Tick rate, tick timer. We'll just set to the tick rate. Because we'll set the initial value. Oh, we need to know how many times we tick. But that... oops. That could also be based on the lifetime, so we might be okay there. And then the radius, of course, is just the radius. Nothing fancy there. Okay. And that should be pretty much everything we'll need. So now we can start looking at the update function. The update function needs to count down the tick timer. Simple enough. We do that one all the time. When tick timer is less than or equal to 0, we will increment the tick timer. By whatever the tick rate is supposed to be, so that it can start counting back down again. It is const right now, so that needs to not be const. And when this occurs, we have to actually spawn or deal damage in a certain radius. So we saw yesterday that we can call game, although we have to include game first. So let's include game, which is our global game pointer, game object pointer. And in here, we need to actually include Adventures in Lestoria. Because it has game inside of it. So now we should have access to the game pointer. We can then call the hurt function and hurt anything inside a certain range. So this is supposed to be a non-friendly thing. It's only supposed to be for monsters. So this is supposed to hurt players. I guess it would be wise to add some flag for players right now by doing const bool friendly. Now, I'm kind of hating this idea of using booleans to represent this friendly thing. So I think I'm actually going to add a friendly enum now to handle this. Normally it's supposed to be just for bullets, but can also be for effects. So I think I'm going to include a separate header with those, with just that in it. I think that would be fine, although, oh, there's an emitter.h here, which does have a derived class. Now that's interesting, because the emitter has a frequency and a timer and comes with an felapse time. Okay, so you create an emitter and it will constantly call the emit function, and I guess you just run whatever you want in there. So that's kind of cool. We can actually utilize that. Good to know. Cool. So I'm gonna go as far as to say that the Blizzard class is going to have an emitter. So we will also include emitter.h at this point, so that we can utilize one. And this is going to be like the snow, essentially. And then we have to construct it, I think, on the fly. But we'll get back to that. First, we need to establish the friendly flag. And I want to do that for both effects and bullets. So since it needs to be shared between more than one class, I think it would be wise to create a new header file just for that. And I called it header.h. Wonderful. That's not what I wanted. So this should be called friendly I want to say it's like the friendly classification, but that's really wordy, right? For I don't the friendly I'm just gonna call it the friendly tag, right? So it's either friendly or not. So I actually really like this, and this is something I've been doing a lot, is that sometimes I don't want to have to type out, okay, and I'm going all caps here, but I don't want to have to type, wait, I'm not doing all caps, that looks weird. I don't like using enum classes because then they force you to always type out the name, and I also don't like using just enums because if they're inside a namespace, like for example, or excuse me, I don't like using enum classes in a namespace because what ends up happening is I have to do something like this, right? And then you end up typing like two redundant things. Well, the trick here is if you wanted to specifically have a name, but you also want it to be available without typing this, then you just type friendly colon and then whatever, and it gives you the values you want. You don't have to type friendly colon friendly type every time. So I have friendly and non-friendly. I don't really want to put like enemies, so I think this will be a good compromise. And that's pretty much what I wanted. Friendly tag will be included both inside of the effect header at the top, so we have friendly tag, and then we're also going to include it for the bullet header. Because bullets also require a friendly tag. So we're going to be making a pretty major adjustment here in a second, and this could actually apply to the demo branch as well. So we might do a separate stash for this again. Hi there, Moros. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, so I think we're about to adjust all this. So there's our friendly boolean. I think we're now going to replace it with an actual enum using the friendly tag. Some bullets are friendly and they don't hurt you, but some bullets are not and they do hurt you. Yes. At least in this game, in this world it does. So I'm now going to replace this, which is going to potentially break everything. So let's, it'll be a pretty major change. I'm going to save everything real quick and add friendly tag. And prepare implementation for Blizzard effect. Actually, I think I leave friendly tag out of this, so I'm going to unstage that one. And I'll stage the rest. Okay, yeah, let's do that. What I'm doing here is I'm actually going to stash all. So I have stashed, and now there's nothing left. And then I'm going to specifically bring back this file. and work on changing everything about it from there. I wish I could just say restore this one. That would have been nice. Yes. Essentially, I'm just copy pasting it. I think when I restore it, it's going to do that too, but where'd it go? There it is. Okay. So we'll start on it from here now. I feel like somewhere there's a bullet social media where you can find friend and unfriend bullets. Hi Plasticky, good morning. You have Girl Scout cookies, yay! Plasticky got me Girl Scout cookies. Apparently they're called Samoas. On the website they said Caramel Delights, which I think are the same thing, or they might be a variation of the Samoas. No, Plasticky, not the Thin Mints. I always get the Thin Mints, so I told her to get something different. God. Nobody ever listens to me. Alright, so bullet, and we go to effect, and we have... Okay. So, the objective now is to replace all these. So this is going to break literally everything, which is why I did a stash, because when we do this, we're actually going to end up with everything breaking. So I should be able to now do... wait, that's not what I wanted. I didn't actually want this namespace here. I was just showing an example, but I actually don't want this here. I just want the enum itself. Although, that makes me think, I actually want an enum class. Or do I? So let me think about this for a second. Because what I could potentially do here, I have the chance to do something interesting, is I could have it accept either a boolean or a type, a friendly type, like an enum type like this. So that's interesting. I don't know if I want that. Maybe I'll just enforce the typing, right? It's an interesting idea. And I think with enums I can actually do that because these numbers are set like that. Although, I would go ahead and then specify that this is going to be a represented as a boolean, which tends to be a little, which is a little more obscure. I'm thinking of that, just to have a little more of that flexibility. It's something I'm thinking about, but I'm not fully committed to yet. And but yeah, that's what I was worried about. This isn't a friendly type. So it could be, I could use a using to make it represent as a boolean, but then also used as an enum that represents the same thing. Also, I didn't mean to undo like that. Wait, did I not edit it? Hold on. I did, but with the namespace, I'm a little confused. Because it looks like I was editing a temp file, which I don't need to do. So, yeah, it doesn't accept the true, but it would accept the actual friendly or not friendly values. I kind of wish it would accept both, but maybe I have to make a custom class in order to accomplish that. Sidetracked by cookies. Ah, yes. So I'm thinking about this. Also, okay. I have to edit it again. I was confused why everything I just wrote didn't matter, and it didn't matter because I was editing a temporary file. But yes, I'm thinking this is what I want. And so then I would want this to be possible, but it won't let me. Not unless I write a custom class that will accept booleans in place for this class. So, is that what I want? Thinking. Or am I gonna go through and replace all the booleans? Because I would like this to be a thing for the future, but maybe right now... It's an idea. Might be a good chance to practice specifying type conversions anyways. It's not an entirely bad idea. So here's what we're going to do. These two names need to be available in the global namespace, which means they could be represented with usings. Like so. And essentially, that would mean that I no longer need to have this because they would be represented as booleans. But then I would also like to have a friendly type that converts these names into named values. So it's like, I want an enum, I want the features of an enum, but I also want the flexibility of converting from a boolean. It would work as an enum, but it wouldn't work backwards. Like, if I wanted to put true there, I couldn't. And I think it would be nice to have all legacy code still work with the value of true, but then all new code to work with the value of friendly. And yes, hello, welcome. So this is kind of interesting and something I would like to actually address. So classes could act as namespaces if I make static variables inside of them. So that's an idea. So internally, do I want to represent them just as booleans and just require them to be a made-up type? I guess that's what I'm aiming for. But really, they're booleans underneath. So, like... the expectation is that I can put in true here, or the keyword friendly, and either would take. But what would this mean? This would just be true as well, right? So are we converting these to booleans and this means a boolean? How would I enforce that? What's stopping me from just putting bool again, right? I mean, nothing really other than myself. So I think at this point I'm just talking in circles, and what I really want is to just say this means boolean, and then these keywords also represent their boolean counterparts. That's what I'm thinking I want. I basically just want this. Which, I don't know if I really get any benefits from this then. If I can use it both as a, like, the whole point of using an enum is to prevent yourself from putting, like, errant values, right? Like, if I really want to enforce something like this, I would full commit and not use true and false at all. I would actually use these special values. And that's the whole point. Like, I wanted to make it so the constructor's a little more readable by saying, okay, I can tell whether it's friendly or not straight from the constructor instead. So instead of just having a bunch of like true and falses in a row. So I think I'm just trying to shortcut the problem and avoid the hard work. So we have to go with this anyways. Or at least this. At least just the enum class. And we do want to be able to use it as a comparison for like a boolean. Yeah, avoiding hard work only gets you so far. So I'm still going to represent these as true and false, just... Yeah, realistically, we're gonna have to change everything. That's just what we've accepted at this point. Now, I would still like to access these without having to type them out, though. So this is where the enum thing I was talking about comes into play, right? I can just have that. Then I can type that. Because friendly and non-friendly are not going to mean anything else in my code, so I don't mind that part being global. And by default, these are going to be non-friendly, not friendly. Otherwise, we'll entirely change the behavior of pretty much everything in the game. By default. Before it's more work to avoid the work you are trying to avoid. Yeah, exactly. I'm just overcomplicating the step that I'm complicated by, with more complications. So it's like, what am I doing here? What have I done? So we're gonna, once we change the constructors in here and in here, all the other bullet code should break, and we can just follow the errors and fix them. Line by line. So since iBullet needs these two, I think I just put them in iBullet. So let's go one level deeper, because bullet depends on iBullet, which is an interface class. Okay. More abstractions! Let's just be more confused about our code base. Yes! We can't just simply make it work, we have to way overthink how we make everything work, right? And obscure our code behind so much abstraction that it no longer looks like anything that we originally intended. And then we can finally get to the part where we actually want to implement the thing we were trying to do in the first place. Okay, so everything should be broken now. So if I go ahead and build, we will find errors right away. Are you even a proper coder if you can read your own code? I guess not, huh? Come on, you can do it. I believe in you. Alright, starting now. But we can just assume every bullet is going to be messed up, so we can go straight to the bullet types file, where most of these are defined, and start from there. But there are going to be plenty of locations that we have to edit, because all of these will have that, so we can definitely do a find and replace here. That'll be easy enough. So we can do bool friendly is false with friendly type friendly equals non-friendly in the current document. And then, let's see here, that should replace a lot of these, but not all necessarily. And of course that's going to make the actual implementations wrong, because they relied on those constructors, which have now been modified completely. It looks like all of them were non-friendly by default. I don't see any that were friendly originally, but let's try to find and replace for any of these, just in case. 0 occurrences replaced. Alright, Morris, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you around. Okay. So I'm just going to hit rebuild here, and we know already all of these are going to have to be changed. Apparently there's a syntax error. That's always fun. I have double commas. Great. And then let's keep going. What do we have? It's probably going to get to one of the bullet files to try and compile it, and then it'll say that it cannot. Yeah, we can see here a lot of bullet stuff coming out now. So cannot find bullet constructor that matches. So yeah, bool friendly is not a thing anymore. Now it's friendly type. And that's going to change all the parent constructors that relied on this, which is then going to produce even more errors, of course. So this is all cascading. All of it is going to keep following each other. Oh, it's still building. Or it's still attempting, surprisingly. I don't know what it's trying to do right now, but it's definitely doing something. It also just is not auto-scrolling for whatever reason. Okay, now it is. Okay, so yeah, plenty of errors to work with here. Of course, it's still saying the overload member function cannot be found. Really? Even though I just made this? I think that, oh, that was the old compile, excuse me. Now we rebuild again after I've made those changes, which then should result in something different. So now we get more errors. And it starts with bomb, so one of the first bullet types, right? And we can just go through and start fixing all these. So here it was const bool friendly, now it's const friendly type friendly. So I guess what we could look for, if we want to do like a full find and replace on everything here, it should just be whatever is bool friendly. But I'm not actually going to do the find and replace, we're actually going to go search each case individually and replace them ourselves, because maybe we used friendly in a context that isn't for a bullet or a special effect, right? So if I hit find all, we're going to start getting everything related to bool friendly, and then we can go through each line by line and fix them. That would be the smart way to do this, because there is so much to look at and so much code to change. So here we're going to replace this one and this one. And then we can notice by default, we see some true and falses here. This is what I was trying to prevent, right? Like, we already have so many of these. Adding in more true and falses when we are defining these massive constructors is just going to make it even harder to read. So this is one change I've been meaning to do for a little while, but obviously it requires a gigantic change in the code base, and this is pretty legacy code, so I would do this for the other booleans too, like hits multiple on upper level, right? If we replace them with actual words, then when we're reading them in code, we know exactly what these booleans are, which is why I try to avoid a bunch of booleans in a constructor nowadays, because we're going to end up in the same situation of not being able to figure out what these actually mean. So I'm going to keep going, keep replacing these. That's friendly type upper level. That's friendly type upper level. I don't know why I did that. I meant to replace friendly. Friendly, friendly. Keep going. Some of these are already replaced, likely because it's searched after the fact. Like, this is kind of cached, right? So some of the results have already changed. But we're gonna keep going and replacing all these. Then eventually we're gonna end up in the situation where wherever we called these, they were originally gonna use true and false. So we're then gonna have to replace all the calls of these with this new friendly type. This is one of those things where it's like, do we really have to do this? A lot of programmers would probably ask that, right? Like, do we really have to do the refactor? Do we really have to make this change across the entire code base? And as a single developer, you would have to ask that yourself if you think it's worth it in terms of making code readability better or making it easier to tell what is going on, right? Because at the end of the day, if you don't know what your code base does and you don't know how to use it, then that's on you. So if you can refactor something to make your code base cleaner, I generally say that that's worth it. It usually is. And if it's not, then it can be made to be worth it with the right amount of changes and correctness. But sometimes you're like, a change is so massive that it's not worth doing right now. It would be like a nicety for you as a programmer, but you have other things like higher priorities, right? You can make your code base as super clean and understandable and fluid as you want, but how much would you actually get done if you refactor the same things over and over and over again, trying to reach perfection? There's also that side of the coin. You might not get anything done ever, right? So you gotta think about it both ways. What can you sacrifice? You're always sacrificing something. You're sacrificing code quality, you're sacrificing time. Or you're sacrificing content, I guess is another way to look at it, right? It's like, it's opportunity cost. What could you be doing instead that you are doing now? Luckily, I have the luxury of this being kind of a hobby game dev project that I can kind of work on at my own leisure. Sure, it will be nice to release this game eventually. I don't want to sit on it for another 5-10 years. But I'm also not on a tight deadline, not a tight crunch. The expected deadline for the game has already been moved back multiple times. That's very normal. And it just gets done when it gets done. That's what I always tell people. Like, I'm not running a business here. I'm at no risk of making or losing money with this project. So I don't really have any stake in this. I just do it because I enjoy programming. It gives me something to do, and it's fun. I also like to stream the programming process and share it with others because it gives others some insight as to what goes on in programming a video game, or just programming in general, right? Sometimes the things I have to do are hard to explain, but are easy to show. And in this case, being able to see on a day-to-day basis what goes on in the project is a good way to understand, like, oh, why does programming this take so long? Why is this feature not done? Why does this feature take forever, right? It's like, you get some more context when you can actually see it being worked on. This window continuously is in my way. I need to put it in a spot where I can open it and close it repeatedly. So I will just, let's auto hide that so that we can just pull it open repeatedly. There we go. That'll be a little better than me dragging this window around everywhere, right? Okay. So anyways, I'm making the respective changes and coming up on the final bits of that search. It's not comprehensive, and of course, the actual places where these are called all need to use this new enum, so we're barely halfway done. Despite us almost changing all of these already. But I've been meaning to do this for a while, and so I'm going to. Also, when you make a change like this in your codebase, this is finally where your unit testing suite becomes useful. The more complete and the more code coverage you have, yeah, I like using that funny word. Code coverage, God. But the more code coverage you have for your tests, the more likely that your code is still correct after you have made all possible changes to your refactor. So unit tests are very, very powerful in situations where you have to refactor giant portions of your codebase, because it will make sure that it detects any potential errors you have by testing the entire behavior of your code to see if it still behaves the same way that it did before. That is the objective of unit tests, is does your code still behave correctly? Before you make any sweeping changes to your codebase, or the expectation after you make sweeping changes to your codebase, is that it still works the same way as before, you just have a slightly easier program to work with in terms of readability or maybe usability. And in this case, it does make the code a little more readable, so that is what I'm doing here. But we're all human, and humans can make errors all the time by mistake. So if you have unit tests to catch that for you, then you can make sure, or you can be confident that everything you change will still work. Now, we also have that side effect, or that side confidence, from using a Git repository. So if you're ever going to make sweeping changes, you at least need to have a backup. In case everything you just did breaks something very important, and for some reason it's catastrophic, you can't figure out why. Every programmer who's worked on projects has been through this. They've made some crazy change to their code, they haven't tested it in a while, they finally get done with the changes, they run their code, everything's broken, they have no idea what they did wrong because they made so many changes and haven't tested, and the only option other than tireless hours of debugging in hopes of finding something is to just rewind the code, do it again, or have a different plan of attack. Okay, so those are all done. So let's look at what the next type of errors should be, which will be anything that actually uses these in a constructor. So as you can see, for example, these create new unique pointers. For any that don't use the default true and false, they're going to error out now because those constructors no longer are valid. So it should complain about, like, cannot find constructor for blah blah blah. So we see here, cannot convert from initializer list to bullet, because one of the bullets used true and false. So we go over here. Now here's the fun part, is we have to make sure whatever true or false we change is actually the friendly flag, right? So it's going to be right next to upper level in most cases, so we can see here that is indeed the friendly flag. And this is also why we are making sure that we're changing it to, say, friendly or non-friendly, because what does that false mean? It's very easy to glimpse it by, and you really don't have a clue if that true or false, what it means, without actually knowing the code base and constantly looking up what they actually mean. So yeah, these are going to be a lot harder to get through. There are 238 errors remaining, about on par to what I would expect, and most of them are going to come from these create bullet functions. So that was breaking pillar. So next up is explosive trap. So here we actually didn't change it yet to friendly type. So we've done that. And then next we have, let me scooch these over, these are kind of far. There we go. So after explosive trap, we have something in item enchant. So item enchant, does it have a friendly flag, or is that just, it looks like that's just a cascading effect. One tip I have, if you do use C++ and you're trying to interpret errors, don't take more than of the first few lines to heart, because usually errors are what we call cascading. Once one error occurs, the rest of the code is essentially non-usable. So a lot of times, errors that follow the main error that's blocking your program from running, usually are a result of the bad errors from the first error. So that means, like, okay, if some object you use now has an error, anything that relied on that object no longer can be used. So, in this case, friendly type is not a valid identifier. Oh wait, that needs to change. I think that was it. Rebuild. And that makes all the other errors just be cascaded errors from the first error. And they aren't really that useful, and you usually just have to recompile. Also, sometimes IntelliSense is dumb, so for C++ programmers relying a lot on IntelliSense, sometimes it's not clear what IntelliSense is trying to tell you error-wise, so you might want to actually just try a compile that will give you a strict message saying, okay, this is actually what's going on. Hi there, the Grand Shark. Are these runtime errors or compile time errors? Right now, we're fixing some compile time errors because we are doing a major refactor at this moment. So I have just broken a lot of code in the code base, so I'm just currently going through all of them. I guess I could pull this up here because it's hidden by my camera, but yes, we're currently going through all these. There are plenty to do. We just have to make this change everywhere. So that doesn't look like a rebuild. Let me just do this one more time. It looks like it's failing at something it shouldn't. Okay. So just let it do its thing. It's still focused on damage number.h, but let's just go to damage number.cpp and fix anything wrong here, which includes the add damage number call. So down here for add damage number, where is that? Oh, it's actually near the top. I forgot. We just added this yesterday, so here it is, add damage number. We already added the friendly type there, so that should be fine. But it says identifier friendly type is the error, so that means it doesn't even know what friendly type is. So that means we just need to add the include. That's right. We don't even have it included yet. So include friendly type tag. I might just change that to friendly type just to avoid confusion. Also, I will auto hide this as well. Okay, so now we're back to more sane errors. I don't like that it's populating these like backwards. Like, I wish it would just stay up top here because that's what matters. So we're looking at turret.cpp item enchant.h. Turret.cpp. Okay. So all these bullets now are going to have that change. So here is the upper level boolean, and following that is the friendly flag, which I'm going to add non-friendly, like so. And I bet I do this in a lot of places. So one thing we could do to speed things up a little bit is anywhere we have dot upper level. Also, if we're gonna do this like globally, something so massive, we want to double check every change before we just do a find and replace, because that's kind of dangerous, right? So we're looking for dot upper level comma false, which would mean it's supposed to be replaced with dot upper level comma non-friendly. I assume we've used this pattern in a couple places, so it should be a pretty easy way to find a lot of stuff. So we can go ahead and hit find next and see if anything pops up. In fact, we should just do a find on all these and go from there. So there's one, easy enough. And that clearly needs to be non-friendly. Oops, noon. Find next. No more occurrences, surprisingly. Okay. Let's see what else we can find then. Just keep rebuilding as we dig through all these errors. Okay, so let's see. We got some stuff in Wizard, that makes sense. Wizards cast magic, and the magic attacks are bullets. Now, these ones are going to be friendly bullets because they're coming from the player. At least that's the expectation here. So again, we can see here we have trues now, so we're placing them with the friendly keyword. So there's that one. There's probably more bullets we create too. So let's look for more create bullet macros, if there aren't any. Also, effects would also have this too, potentially. It's entirely possible. But there's some more create bullets. You can see they are errored out, and we should expect the same thing. 1, 2. Okay. We should expect this from every player class, to be honest, so probably we'll see them in Ranger for sure. Trapper will have some, Thief will have some, etc., right? Everything's gonna have these things because there's so many bullets. So this is a frog tongue, so it's going to be non-friendly. And then we have the sandworm. Sandworm, which has a bullet right there. That's also non-friendly. I just have to make sure I'm choosing between the correct ones. Most of the time they're going to be non-friendly, right? Because most of these are from monsters. Only a couple things come from players. Ink bullet. So we already have that there, but it's probably going to complain about the implementation of it, or the definition of it. Really? Well, let's go take a look at ink bullet. Ah, so we didn't change it here. Oops. This should be a friendly type. It looks like there's quite a few here we didn't end up changing. Let me just do another find and replace here. Okay, so this is for ones without any defaults. And it looks like there were 2 other occurrences like that. And, oh, I deleted the comma by accident. Okay. So that takes care of those. First bullet. So we got giant octopus. Has a lot of stuff. So as I'm going through these, you can start to see or realize what the size of this game is actually like. There is a ton of things to modify and change. It is a very involved project. So right here, that's supposed to be non-friendly. There are a couple more create bullet calls I saw, so we get to do the same thing here. And right there. Here's another one. More there. Okay. Then we have Ghost of Pirate Captain, another boss. Where is this file? Oh. I think it's just having a hard time keeping up with every context shift I do over here. So we have that. That's non-friendly. We got a couple bullets here. All non-friendlies. There we go. I'm nowhere close to writing anything this large or complicated. Yeah, it's It's a damn intimidating project for sure. Here's what happens after you work on something for a couple years. Just kind of have tons of code everywhere. Who'd have thought, right? Okay, anything else? Aha, there's another phase with more bullets. Same problem. So we're seeing here this pattern of using the on upper level function call instead of the on upper level variable directly. So this is a good opportunity to do another global search to try and find anything with on upper level comma false in it and potentially replacing all those. So we see there are 34 of these, and we can expect that all these are going to be changes. I'm just doing a glance real quick. That's for more Ghost of Pirate Captain. I can see them down here if I just look on the scroll bar. So there's a couple more. Item script has one, interestingly enough. Let me see. Thrown projectile. Okay, that is a bullet, so that needs to change too. And that's for... So this is considered a non-friendly bullet? Wait. That's weird. Okay, hold on. The thrown projectile hurts the player? Because what I'm reading here is that this is a non-friendly... Oh, see, this is where we have to be careful, right? Like, this is a different context. This is whether or not it hits multiple. The friendly flag is actually over here. This is why this friendly flag needs to get implemented, because this code is non-readable with all these true and falses. When you're not busy, could I ask why you don't like Python? Oh, well, I can do that while doing this. I don't necessarily like Python because mostly the syntax requirements, like it uses whitespace in order for you to denote your code. So ideally, if you're going to separate things by like if statements and whatnot, you want to put them in brackets or curly braces, right? And that way you know everything in here is like this. And Python enforces you to use like these tabs and stuff. So if I were out here, Python would scream because this is now actually part of the code out here. Or if you're not careful and you're not using like if statements or such, you might accidentally put code in the wrong section. I think the white space requirement is kind of dumb. I'm glad you can actually still add these, but they're more just like there. I think other than that, Python is okay. It's a good starting language, and I recommend it if people are getting into programming, because it's very easy to just open up a Python terminal and start writing Python to learn programming. So it's not a bad language in the sense of I don't recommend it, but I don't like using it because I have to work with strict whitespace rules, and I don't like that it's slower in the sense of it's not like incredibly slow, right? And obviously you can write slow C. You can write slow C++. But if you need something really fast, then unfortunately Python out of the box does not come with what you need. It's still pretty fast for like basic math and stuff, and people have written libraries that hook into C libraries, so essentially you're just writing C in Python. But then you might as well just use C, right? Or C++. I think the speed argument is usually the more common one. I don't think it's that big a deal, because anybody can write slow code if they really tried. So that's usually up to the person implementing the algorithms. These are player related. Let's see, so thief, shooting bullets, so these must be hit multiples again. So the player ones are... Yeah, the player ones must be different. So we have to be really careful with this, right? There's a bullet constructor where... So let's look at this. There is a bullet constructor where upper level and friendly are next to each other. Another constructor where it goes upper level, hits multiple, lifetime, rotates with angle, and then the friendly tags. So this is very dangerous. Like, this is why I was not a fan of just doing a ton of booleans here, and why we're replacing all these, because this here is very unreadable. I don't know what all these true and falses mean, and if I change the wrong one, I could cause, like, a catastrophic problem. Like, suddenly the player bullets are killing the player instead of hurting the enemies, right? This is very dangerous. Okay. Usually in my Twitch description where I list like the languages I like and don't like, it's more of a like icebreaker kind of topic. I don't truly like hate them with like a vengeance and will never use it ever or write in my life and swear that anybody that writes in them like are wrong. Like, I'm not like that, right? It's more like, yeah, if I had a choice of what I wanted to write my programs in, this is what I wouldn't use, and it's just like minor gripes. It's not like I'm totally saying you can't use Python. I recommend it, especially if you're a new programmer. It is very beginner friendly. It has all the main structures and types that you would need. It has very extensive libraries, a lot of good documentation. There's nothing inherently wrong with using Python, just I don't like very specific things about them. So it was recommended to me as a starting point. That's good. I recommend it as a starting point as well. I get why, but to be honest, I'm not enjoying Python. I don't like the syntax, and the longer I watch people code, I get the feeling Python is hiding a lot of things. And you're not wrong. Python is quite a high-level language out of the box. Struct point int xy point p equals dot y equals 10 dot x equals 5. If you're using C++20, you can use designated initializers. I believe they have to be in the same order though. Like, I'm pretty sure C++ complains if they are out of order. Is that incorrect? Because I think we tried that very recently, and I know that's been a rule in these for... Okay, so my understanding is correct then. Yeah, I am aware. Unfortunately, I don't really use structs that much. I use it sometimes, but not often. And a lot of this is, right now what we're editing is a lot of legacy code. So you can imagine that most of these that have like a million defaults in them, they used to not have a million defaults in them, and now they do, right? So it's kind of a fault of, I guess we could call this tech debt over time. Over time, this was never designed, so to speak. It's just over time it grew and grew. And this is the cost. But it can solve your multiple boolean issue. That is true. That is very true. This would be very hard to change for that though, because these internally are standard unique pointers inside of a list of pointers. So they are all managed by a list. It's currently a global list. This would be a massive undertaking to change everything, because I would need to first make something that would represent these structs, because they also use inheritance. So that's another thing. When you have inheritance, then the order of these also changes based on what they inherit, which makes this even more complicated. So, and not only that, I'd have non-aggregate initializers and everything. So unfortunately, this is very much impossible to change without changing the entire code base at this point. We are essentially stuck in tech debt. So we make do what we can. But back to the Python thing. I will admit that you aren't going to learn every fundamental concept, especially anything involving memory management, via Python. Garbage collection is very much something that makes it easy for programmers to work with coding quickly, but it also results in it being invisible, like you said. But that's also a choice of the programmer. If you really want to learn and get deep in the weeds of how to program and manage memory yourself, then C is a very obvious first choice. C++ less so because it's a more complex beast, but is also an option. On a more granular, on a more higher level, excuse me, TypeScript wouldn't be so bad either. It's like the sister language, it's a transpiled language for JavaScript, but it has types and gets you kind of into that zone. Java, I'm not too big in recommending Java though. I would rather just recommend C#, honestly. You can make a struct constructor and pass it to the constructor. Oh, that is true. Like, we could literally just make something that contains all this data in another struct and then define that struct. That's not a bad idea. But if you aren't enjoying Python, then I do recommend exploring and seeing what's out there. Typeless languages might just not be your flavor. Maybe you just want a typed language. But if you want like something a little more memory management, you could try C. I think C is a very good starting point for just learning the concepts of programming with no guardrails. That includes all the footguns that will mess up everything in your program. This will be friendly. This is also a friendly bullet. C and Bash? Yeah, by all means. Bash is a little more weird because it's just, it's more like a scripting language. It's meant to run other commands, so using it for programming is a bit more challenging. Trust me, I would know. I tried to write a procedurally generated like obstacle builder for like a 3D game. It would like generate 3-dimensional maps on the fly, and I used Bash for the whole thing, and boy was that a mess. An absolute mess. I would much rather build it in a proper programming language. Whereas Bash is great if you need to automate Linux systems, because you can just mash a bunch of commands and their outputs and files together, and it'll just spit out the results for you. Yeah, I have to be very careful here not to make a mistake, because there is... At least I understand what the two constructors look like now. We can kind of see how the shape of it goes. If it's right here on upper level, but then there's more booleans over here, we know it goes here. But again, I have to be really, really careful not to mess this up. But it looks like I've gotten most of them at this point. Still a couple. But I would like to just get all this settled down today. And from here... Okay, that's just using the default. We won't have this issue anymore of not knowing what the friendly tags of stuff is by looking at the constructor. You want to learn Bash so the transition to Linux isn't so out of reach. I mean, that's very fair. Yeah. I would just set up like either a dual boot or a spare computer too, and just try to use it a little bit over time. Let's do a rebuild and see where we're at. Okay, we're down to 158 errors, so we got rid of some of the more obvious stuff. So now we're looking at, let's see, Stone Elemental has a bullet. Let's see. It's right there. Non-friendly. We have Ranger. So this is a player bullet. So this is made with the OLC Pixel game engine, which is a library essentially that lets you draw on screen. It does use OpenGL natively. It can use OpenGL 1 or OpenGL 3, and also supports EGL 2, I think. So that lets us do mscript and stuff. Also, I am a girl. You can make a compiler to give you a safeguard instead of a bool pass. And if you make a mistake, the compiler will yell at you. A compiler gives you a kind of like, is that what are they called? I forget what they're called. Concepts? Is that what concepts are about? I know concepts exist now. I think they're supposed to be to check for template, like, is to restrict template specializations. I think that's what they are, but I very much do not have experience with the metaprogramming aspects of C++ yet. But I believe that's what concepts are for. Just regular type safety? Oh, enum class. Right. I just wanted to be able to use friendly and non-friendly globally, which is why I decided to do friendly type. Wait, let me read that one more time. Instead of a bool pass, use enum class. So I'm using an enum as the type, which still enforces the type? Is that correct? It does, right? Like, I have to specify either friendly or non-friendly, even for an enum. I might be missing the point here. So this is friendly. But yes, that is what we're doing today, because I just don't want to have these here anymore, and I've been meaning to do that. It was like, I had a day where I decided for the interface systems for this game, I wanted to transfer them all to use shared pointers instead of shared pointers and weak pointers instead of raw pointers. And when I decided to make that change, this is pretty much the same concept. I had to do so much refactoring on essentially the whole game. So here we are today making another just like internal code change, yet the whole game is going to work the same way. So enum is not enforcing. If you pass bool or int, the compiler will not yell at you. Am I using enum? Am I using enum class? Because right now everything, maybe I am using enum class and I just misspoken. Why is it erroring out? Is it only erroring out because I have incorrect? No, right? Our errors are coming from being unable to match. Yeah, cannot convert from initializer list to falling bullet. These errors are coming from not matching, I think. This might be enforcement for make unique. Maybe this enforces it in enums. Is that right? I guess compiler could do that if the template says it has to be an enum type, then it's going to do that even if I don't specify an enum class, right? I might be wrong. Let's test it real quick, because that's interesting. You know, I thought the same thing too, and I thought that was the key difference between a enum and enum class, right? Like, to me, that actually sounds correct. So let's just try to do this real quick, just as a test. I want to see what happens. Just make up some stuff, and then let me just put true here. The rest is optional. And it looks like no instance of constructor bullet matches this argument list, so that's very fascinating. But for some reason, at least I thought that was the case too. Because we can see here, when I navigate to it, this is an enum. I just added that it represents booleans instead of, you know, numbers. But I originally thought too that if we typed in like numbers or something, we would end up... Where was I? Oh god. I don't know where I was. But yeah. Is it Control Shift? How do I navigate forward? There's gotta be a way, right? Hello? I know how to navigate backward, but not forward. I thought enum classes were more type safe too, so this is fascinating. Maybe we're both learning something today. Give me a second. I know it's backward. Let me try backward. Oh, that's not... Back? It's like... I think it's called like navigate. Navigation. Navigate backward is control plus minus. Navigate forward is control plus equals. So that should work then. It says it's a global shortcut. Unless I'm doing something dumb. Let me also assign control shift equals. See, I can navigate backward. Oh, it's working. Okay, well, I lost my spot anyway. Yeah, that's... No, I thought the same thing. I don't think you're wrong here. But there must be something else going on, right? Now I'm gonna check, because I am curious. It's nice to know what we're doing inside... See, this is what I mean. I was talking about this the other day. Even folks who are veterans to C++, there's plenty of things that surprise C++ developers every day when trying to work with the programming language because of how advanced it is. Okay, so declaration of a scoped enumeration type. Since C++ 11, it's a scoped enumeration type whose underlying type is... Okay, well that's depending on that. Each enumerator becomes a named constant of the enumeration's type. Oh, I think it's just a... It's just considered kind of like a namespace type of deal, where you're forced to put this in front of it, because I know without it, you just have your keywords, like red, green, blue, or you could type color, : red, green, blue if you use an enum, but with class, you're forced to do this every time to represent it. Using enum, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if there's any other... It's almost like... See, because I thought the same way. I thought... I was always taught, right? Enum class was better to use in that sense of you will always have that type, and if you just use enum, right? But That's interesting. I'm gonna see what Learn CPP says about it real quick, because we could probably get a better explanation of it. Scoped enumerations versus unscoped enumerations. Although unscoped enumerations are distinct types, so the first sentence already kind of says that they are distinct types, they are not type safe, okay? In some cases will allow you to do things that don't make sense. Let's see. So here we have an enum color, enum fruit. Color red, fruit banana. If color is equal to fruit, the compiler will compare fruit. Oh, it represents them. So for comparison's sake, they can be compared because they are the same underlying type. Okay, that makes sense, because I know when we're trying to like do comparisons, typically we would have to cast them, right? If we're using enum class, versus if we don't use enum class, we can just say is equal to, like up here, we just say is equal to banana. 0 is banana, so we could type 0 and not banana. Whereas scoped enumerations, I guess for comparison's sake, this will be a compile error. Okay, so that's where the type safety comes in. I don't know if it's just for comparisons. Let's see if it says anything else. They also define their own scope regions. That makes sense. They don't implicitly convert to integers. Yes. So you can do color to color comparisons. You cannot do integer to color comparisons. You can use to underlying to convert to an underlying type. Since C++ 2023, you can also static cast an integer to a scoped enumerator. As of C++ 17, you can list initialize a scoped enumeration using an integral value without static cast. Okay, interesting. Easing the conversion of scoped integers to, or enumerators to integers advanced. Okay, I've done this before, partially by accident, but I'm like, I really want the ability to, like, add together multiple, like, custom enum classes I made and such, and so I've done stuff like this by accident, without realizing that's exactly what I was trying to do. You have using enum statements. Okay. So I guess that's the key difference, just the comparison ability and how you can cast them. Because this underlying type here is what determines how comparisons are made. But I guess internally, C++ does make sure that it's its own type. So I guess we both learned something new today. That's very cool. Just getting back to Grand Shark, the one silver lining to Python is that I can at least prototype an idea very quickly. It will not be very many lines of code. Which is true. For me, that's what the Pixel game engine is for. Like, if I need to prototype something quickly, and this is kind of like newish tech for the Pixel game engine community, there's actually kind of like I guess you could call it like a compiler explorer version of the Pixel game engine, where I can just go in and write, hold on. I can just go in and start with the blank example and test some code I'm working on, right? So I can build something I want to do here. Like maybe I need to know if, maybe I'm testing like, what does the rand function do? Or like something like that, right? Something silly. So then I'd be like, well, okay. Instead of drawing all this stuff, maybe I just draw a grid of random colors or something, right? Funny enough, there's a random color function down there, but maybe I'm like learning and testing some code, or even better, since I'm already in here, maybe I'm learning how ranges work. I don't know. That's a fun one. For int x in standard ranges iota view, right? and I'm just like, okay, 0 to 20. Maybe I'm working on this today. And I want to know, right? Oh, also another thing I liked about this is it pretty much like has all the errors popping up like live, so that's just a nice little bonus. Draw at X, comma, Y, comma, color. Rand. Right? Maybe I just want to do something like that, and we can make it, I don't know, 40 by 40. That way it's pretty big. So yeah, maybe I'm doing something like that, and I just want to know if something works, so there we go. Right? So TLDR, enum to int can do, int enum cannot. I agree with that statement. Honestly, watching me is making me want to switch to CPP. I mean, it can be very fun. I highly recommend it if you just want something to start with. The OLC Pixel game engine might be a great place to start. If you were going to do C, I would recommend Raylib. It's very similar, but it just gives you the ability to plot pixels on the screen very quickly. If you just wanted to learn more, or if you wanted some motivation, this channel right here, One Lone Coder, he goes by JavidX9. He created the Pixel game engine, and one of his videos is starting out in programming, and he just has like advice, right? Where is it? Eight bits of advice for new programmers. So that's just a good video to like talk about, like, okay, if you're kind of new and you're exploring the waters, you're not sure what you're trying to do, right? It's just like, there's some advice from an old bloke who's been around the block. Good guy though. He has a great community. I love that community. Not necessarily just C++ folks in there, but definitely a lot of people that enjoy programming in general. If you just want to learn more, I don't know. I like to shill good programming communities that actually have good people in it, right? Okay, back to this. Let's try and finish up at least. And then we can get back to programming our Blizzard, maybe. We're down to 69 errors. Very nice. Oh, there's our fake bullet we made. Alright. I figured it would pop up in the errors eventually. Let's see here. Where is it? There, that's not it. That's it. I guess it wasn't complaining about that. Wait, is it? Uh-oh. Did I mess up? This is hits multiple. Oh, okay. So we have to, this is what I mean. We have to be very careful about stuff like this. So we're undoing this line because we messed it up. And we'll try it again. Except we'll edit the right one. I just had a bunch of other variables in here, so that's why. I guess I confused myself this time. I found that I kind of like programming. Kind of unfortunate I discovered it through Python. Well, that's okay. You have plenty of time to learn something you might be interested in, and yeah, just enjoy the process. At the end of the day, we're all here just having a good time, trying to make cool things, right? That's the best part about programming. So all this is wrong. I completely fudged this, so yes. Undo. 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 So this is what I mean, like, I have to be very careful, right? At least the compiler will complain about it. If the compiler didn't complain about these, then we'd probably be in some trouble. So it's actually these ones. I'm just gonna triple confirm. Yes. And very likely the ones down here too. I did the exact same thing. I assume none of these hit multiple, but we gotta double check. Um, yes, they were all false before. And these ones down here, well, they're still false. If anything, I am happy to hear that I can at least, like, provide some motivation or some ideas for what you might want to do with programming. I think that's always nice. I always like to encourage people to try out programming and see if they like it. It's a very fun and, for me, a very relaxing activity. And you get to make something that you really enjoy. That's the best part. It's a very creative process, so you kind of fall into this zen of, I'm making something I like and this is my creation. I think it's awesome to be able to say, yeah, I made this. This is what I do. Okay, let's see here. Ghost of Pirate Captain. I think I made about 3 or 4 games using Pygame. What is this? I think this is supposed to be non-friendly? Yes. So Python was my second programming language I ever learned. My first programming language was GameMaker language, which is what you use when you're done with the drag and drop system of GameMaker. You switch over to writing in code. It's kind of like JavaScript, kind of like Python-ish. So I think that's what made it easy for me to switch to Python. And then from there, I tried to make games like GameMaker-like, kinda. I would try to replicate the same functions to make the same things happen on screen. Because in my mind, when I was younger, like, that's all that made sense, right? Instance underscore create is how I make an object. What's an object? It has an X, Y, velocity direction. And a sprite. And if I made that, then I know I can do instance underscore create XY object name and spawn an object on screen. Like, in my head, if I just did that with every game engine I ever made, I'd be golden. I'd be able to write games in any language. Obviously, over time, I realized that it's kind of naive to just stick to one single engine API, and eventually you realize there's some problems with it or better ways to build. So, you know, when I was a kid, like, anything goes, and you tried to make do with what you could. And even if you're... The age doesn't matter, the age part. It's just, when you're a beginner programmer, you throw anything at the wall, and you just want to see what sticks. I think that's the best part. It's very creative, so you just kind of build whatever, and over time you find your niche. You find what you like, you find what you dislike. You don't like Python, that's okay. There's plenty of other programming languages to try. That's the beautiful part. Maybe you might even get into lower level programming and learning how machines work. You might develop your own programming language one day. Who knows? Some people get into that. They just want to build a programming language to say they've done it. It sounds simple on the surface. Once you start trying to build one, you realize there's so many things you have to learn just to build a simple parser for a programming language. You have to learn how to parse tokens. You have to learn how to translate the tokens into commands or operations. How do you interface those operations with computer memory? How does that turn into results for whatever you're trying to build? To me, the best part about computer programming is all the problem solving. It very much requires deep problem solving skills and abilities. It kind of keeps the brain sharp, and it's very fun and satisfying when you finally learn to solve these issues, these problems. Sure, you might not come up with the most optimized way to do it, but first solving the problem is the fun part before getting to the optimization. You might turn into a code golfer, for all I know. You might want to try to write the weirdest code in the least amount of characters or lines of code. Who knows, right? There's a lot of fun ways to go about it. I used to just play around in C with memory. I would just play with like pointers all day and pointers of pointers and references to pointers and pointers. Like I was fascinated by the concept of like you can reference and dereference pointers for whatever reason. And I would just do that stuff all day and see how many star and ampersand characters I can have in my code and still make the same program work. I thought it was just hilarious. It's just fun. Fun to be silly. Making games as a hobby would be a dream, but that's a bit too far for me right now. At the moment, I'm enjoying making small scripts to do animation and seeing what ideas I can program. That's cool. And I highly recommend that approach. You wanna do things that interest you. Not everybody wants to make games, so make something that you enjoy and you like doing. Just 2 or 3 days ago, my girlfriend and I, we were playing an Archipelago multi-world randomizer run, and our save file got messed up. Like, I forgot to unzip the zip folder, so our save file got put in a temporary directory, which is very temporary and gets deleted, right? But then, so we thought the save was gone, but I looked into it further, and the Archipelago clients save a log of everything that happens. So we took that log file, read it into a program, and had it parse out all the cheat commands needed to restore our game to the state it was in before we lost all the data. So things like that just like programming is immensely useful to bend a computer to your will. You can write pretty much whatever you want so long as you can think of a problem you want to solve. And a lot of times, the first thing I think of when I'm like, I need a program to do X, is I don't go searching online for it. I'm just like, I could write it myself. It won't be like great or fancy, and maybe it doesn't have all the features somebody might need, but there's a special charm to using something that you said you wrote yourself, right? I don't know if you've seen this before, but there's a fun video that I like to show people who are very much interested in programming. It's just a fun video. It's just a talk. The Art of Code by Dylan Beatty. And if you've never seen this before, it's a very, very good talk. I recommend the one in this, with that thumbnail right there. Very specific reason why I recommend that, but he does the same talk like 3 years later. But yeah, I recommend that video if you're just interested in being like inspired, because I think this video is absolutely fantastic. It's an hour long, and his talk goes over fun things to do with programming, and it gives you some motivation of like, oh, I want to be a programmer. Here's things you do with programming. It's a lot of fun and truly highlights the essence of what computer programming is about. Like, I've had a few folks ask me like, hey, why don't you just like use like AI to like write out a lot of your code now, or like ask it when you have a problem or something. Why do you just spend all this time solving these problems yourself, or not finding the most optimal way? And my answer to that is usually always that I'm just kind of having fun with it. I genuinely enjoy the problem-solving aspect and the creativity aspects of programming. So just being able to spit out a bunch of code on the screen and having something tell me how to solve a problem isn't satisfying to me. generally, unless I truly have no idea where to even start with the problem, I'm just scrambling through my brain, thinking of ways to solve a problem, right? Like, how do 3D graphics work? How do you represent something in 3D on a two-dimensional screen, right? This question was so imposing to me in my, like, 12-year-old brain that all I obsessed about was figuring out ways to represent 3D in 2 dimensions. Like, literally, that just took over my brain all day. Things like that. And then trying to come up with solutions, failing hundreds of times, only to write something that sort of works. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on how you look at it, I wrote my first 3D engine in Java, which meant it wasn't really great performance-wise, especially because it was a software renderer, a software-based 3D renderer, not a hardware one. So on Java is known to be pretty slow, and it was immensely slow because it was also software-based. But I mean, eventually I figured it out and did it, and I kind of just... If I ever got like super stuck, I took pointers. That channel I showed you earlier, One Lone Coder, or JavaDX9, he does have a 3D series on 3D concepts. A lot of channels, a lot of hobby developer channels do, so I highly recommend checking out more than just his, but he also has one, and he explains the math and the concepts behind it. And so that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to trying to make things, is that this is all creative. This is all something that you do for yourself. It just so happens that computer programming is a pretty high profile job as well. Like in the real world, becoming a computer programmer can yield a pretty large sum of money. On top of, the world needs a lot of them nowadays, because the world is literally run by computers. So I don't blame folks for wanting to learn it for those reasons, but we have to remember there's always another side to it, right? There's people that just need to bring home the money, and there's people that are just passionate about making computers do cool things. A lot of folks ask me if I actually do this for a living, and I tell them I don't. I've just done it for a long time, which is why it can seem like I'm pretty good at programming. Is I've just done it for so long, right? When you've done something for 20 years, you're probably pretty decent at it. You might got your own flair to it, like I literally don't press spacebar wherever I can avoid it, but at the end of the day, like, I just came from wanting to code all day long, all the time. So I get that question a lot. Yeah, I'm also streaming on Twitch TV. I'm multi-streaming. I wanted to try it. So far it looks like it lets me connect with more people, so I've been just leaving it. I wanted to try it as an experiment. Because a lot of people told me that there's plenty of folks that want to watch live streams on YouTube too, for discoverability purposes, so I'm like, that's a decent idea, let's see what happens. Yeah. So far I met a few very wonderful folks through YouTube discovery too, so that's amazing. I really enjoy that. Okay, so what is this complaint about? So... Bullet, no overload function converted all argument types when trying to do what? Called from warrior.cpp, so I must have messed up the true falses here. Oh, I see, so this is just what errors produced by the template engine. We gotta love template errors. They are so fun. Okay. So yes, right here. So this is friendly. YouTube is better for me because I have premium, but I want to be able to read the chat. My handle on Twitch is amay, like AMAY, underscore KR. Let me just confirm that real quick. Yes. amay underscore KR. I think it's actually in the description of the YouTube stream too, if I'm not mistaken. I think I put it there just in case I needed to ever mention that. Yeah, it looks like it. It is there. Interestingly enough. Okay, is that the last of it? Are we sort of in a good state? So we're still failing the build, so there's probably a couple more just lingering. So now we're on template errors. So this is anything that creates a pointer, which there is a lot of, so we're gonna get a lot of these. Unfortunately, it will only do one at a time before the template engine just gives up. So this might take a little bit, but we'll find them all. Non-friendly. And I don't think IntelliSense picks these up. I'm glad Twitch showed you on my recommends. I'm generally a lurker, but felt comfortable enough here to start chatting. Oh, awesome. Well, I'm glad you could chat. I always love chatting to people about programming. Obviously, it's one of my passions, so I just enjoy sharing my stories and ideas and talking to people about programming. I actually love it when people critique my coding. Usually it's my code syntax, but sometimes people critique other stuff. I just kind of love that because it's a fun conversation to have when you know there's other people out there in the world that also like code, right? That code and do what you do. It's like, oh, well, I do this. I'm like, I do that. And it's fun. I never take it as like an attack or anything. I think it's nice to be able to share information and knowledge with other people who also share the same passion and love for your hobby. And plus, if I just take everything as, oh, if people say you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and I'm like, well, I don't wanna, that's just me being ignorant and me not like trying to learn, right? And as a programmer, I always want to try and learn new things I might not know about. I'm not very like, I don't go out and explore a lot of things on the internet, so a lot of times I find out new things about C++ through other people. And then naturally, my curiosity gets to me and I start experimenting with it and finding ways to use that. Or maybe I find reasons to not use it, right? Like, I think one thing that I've always liked about C++ is it has a lot of code expression. So when I go look at other people who stream C++, their C++ looks very different. And each one of those people code C++ in a different way. So I think that's fascinating. We have an incomplete, oh, it says there are 4 errors. It looks like the headers have been rearranged because there are initializations of types that are non-existent or do not exist. Incomplete type v2d 3 is not allowed in util geometry. List initialization of object type standard optional item enchant is not allowed because the item type is incomplete. So item enchant is here. Where is this? Standard optional. Item enchant right here. Okay. So it's saying that we cannot construct this because this does not... Wait. Does that even make sense? It's an optional, so... Type is incomplete, unable to obtain mapped memory. Let me do a rebuild real quick. This is weird. This doesn't look like what it should be. I'm just gonna do a full rebuild. Something's wrong. Micah314, thanks for the follow. But I want to say we should be built. Like, those weren't errors. Those were like... I don't know what those were. We'll see. It is me from the YouTube. Oh. Oh yeah, that is the same name. You're right. Well, thank you for the follow. Either way. I appreciate that. Okay, just waiting for the build process to finish, and then we will see what happens with all this. So after we run this, the next thing we do is we need to run all the unit tests. The unit tests will tell us if we broke something. Ooh, we're generating code. Okay, good. That means it finished building. So it looks like we made changes in 62 files. Excellent. So yeah, build succeeded. I figured it was just some like... It was like probably referencing old files or something, so it didn't quite complete. So now I'm going to switch to the test solution. Oops. And we're going to hit Test Explore. Let's go ahead and build the project and run all of our unit tests. A lot of these unit tests check if like an ability works, if a monster can get affected by an ability. There's a couple of... Every enchant has a test, so these enchantments will get checked, which are ability based. So there is a lot of stuff here that will validate if our bullets now use the proper friendly tags or not. If some monster doesn't get attacked, if like a health value is wrong, all that is going to be determined from these tests. So this is where the unit tests come in handy, is after a gigantic refactor like this, does our game still work? That's the question we want to ask. Hopefully, if we have enough unit tests to comprehensively check that our game is still functional, we can say with confidence our game pretty much works. Since I'm the only one that works on this project, I can't realistically make a test for every single little thing in the game. Boy, I would love to, but that would be way too much work, and we need like thousands of tests. So this is a good enough compromise to get most of them. Do you write the unit test before or after? Generally after. I know in an internship I did that you're usually taught to try and write the unit test before, and there's a good reason for it. It's because you have a spec, right? You know what it's supposed to do. You write the test, it fails, that way you know it can fail. Then you go and implement. But the problem is in a game, you don't quite know the shape of what your code is going to look like, because it's just, there's too many complex systems, right? There's too many interactions to figure out, oh, this is exactly what my code is going to do, and I need exactly this function. It never works that way. I always need an extra function. I'm always missing one. It looks like I am erring on a discarding return value of no return. What? That's a weird one. Discarding return value of function with no discard. I don't think that error message should be erroring. Oh, wait. No, that is wrong. Look at this. It's a comparison. I did this on purpose so the compiler would complain. Yeah, that's an equal to. Is that a typo, or is that... what? That has to be a typo. What was this before? Okay. Right? That has to be a typo. Because that's not an if statement. What? Has that just been there the whole time and I never tested that? Holy shit. Okay, well, I'm glad that there's a no discard there and it's forced to error out. Because compiler is the only way that would catch that without it being a visible bug in the game. Okay. Wow. Alright, do it again. That's insane. Okay. And looking at the code, yeah, it's supposed to be an assignment. So the fact it was... oh, that's why yesterday the damage numbers were not appearing. I remember that. The damage numbers stopped appearing at one point, and I didn't know why. Oh my goodness. I never had a good success with unit testing. I've tried multiple times, but I'm good for now without. And I thought I was too, until my game started getting larger. Once I had 4 classes in the game implemented, and I had like 30 levels, I had 20 enemies, I had like 10 enchantments for each ability. All of a sudden I realized every time I was trying to play my game, I was pressing every button, switching all my gear, switching classes, going through a bunch of levels to test different monsters, and then I realized, wait, I'm literally spending this time, an exponential amount of time, seeing if my game works every single time. So I then had to solve that problem of, well, what do I do? Do I just pray that everything is going to still work later, every single time I rebuild my game? Or do I fix this by hiring little minions to test my code every time? It made me realize that my solution was unit testing. Like, that's what I was looking for the whole time. I was trying to find other ways. I even have like mini tests before I had my test suite, right? So I was like, okay, well, when I had my smaller code base, I would be able to do something like this. Let me just show real quick. So I would have a file called test.h. And basically, it was just like a mini unit testing suite I wrote myself, right? I just wrote an is function so I can make those statements that say, is this variable something I can use? And then, yeah, I would run these tests and... come on. Come on. Yeah, I would say, okay, there are 2 lower bridge collision zones in campaign 1-1, and then I would write the statement for it, it would check, and it would return false, obviously, if it didn't work. So I tried doing things like that. When I would load stuff in, if things bugged out, I would error out in hopes that I would catch things at runtime, right? So runtime testing, which is usually what you would do if your project wasn't massive. It'd be like, oh, okay, if we end up with, if the player ends up with infinite speed, crash the game and error out because we know we did something stupid, right? If we load a file and none of the config loaded, we know we did something wrong. Things like that. Like that. Starting the game with a default pack ID is not allowed. Blah, blah, blah. So far we're 65 unit tests in. They have passed thus far. That's a good sign. And especially the enchant ones. The enchant ones are the most important ones because they test all the abilities on monsters. So I'm hoping those passed. There's a couple other damage checks down here that I hope are still working fine. And then we can say with good confidence that we did the refactor correctly. And then I will jump in game afterward. Well, after this, we'll commit. We restore our stash. Using the new friendly type thing, we add whatever else we need. And then from there, we're good to continue building out the blizzard. And we'll try to finish the blizzard before I call it for today. I did not expect I was going to do a full refactor, but you know, these things kind of just happen, right? Just one day I'm like, yeah, I need to do that. Or I would like to do that. It's like, it's maintenance of code. Like, there's always like maintenance tasks to do. In fact, we can, while I'm waiting for these tests to finish, we can look at that other to-do I was talking about that one day. If I go to player.cpp and I go to the setX function, well, the underscore setX function, I noticed this the other day and I was questioning it. It was set pause. Where is that? Set pause. Okay, so the goal of set pause is to move the player to a new position, right? So here, we're like, okay, try to move in the X direction. If it's true, it means we moved. Try to move in the Y direction. Plain and simple. Then it says, okay, well, if we moved in the Y direction but not the X direction, try to move in the X direction again now that our Y position is different. So my question is, why isn't the opposite true? Why don't we check if we've moved in the X direction, not the Y direction? Why are we not trying the Y direction again either? Surely we would want to do the opposite too. So I was wondering about this and thinking, why would I not do this? Did this have some sort of bug in it? Or am I just crazy? I feel like this makes sense. As long as we also set the result X from a resulting movement of trying to recorrect after moving. Like, I think this is correct. And all this is for is so that if for some reason moving in the X and then the Y is not a valid order, then it would try doing it the other way around, where it would first try to move in the Y and then the X. And if for some reason moving in the Y and then the X makes it work, makes the X work again, then move in the... Wait. I guess that logic's not possible, right? So let's think of the scenarios here. Both could fail, which means nothing happens. X, you could move in the X direction. If you move in the X direction, you've already moved, so try moving in the Y direction. If the X direction fails, then you have the choice of moving in Y, and Y might fail or succeed. If Y fails and X fails, you don't have any movement at all, so it would fail again anyway. If set Y does succeed, you have a chance to move in the X direction again, so this would be the wrong thing to do. I think we just logicked that out, and that makes sense in my head. Doing this would mean we can actually move further than we're allowed to. In theory. Although it's saying move to the same position as before, so technically we wouldn't move, but yeah, I think you get the point. This would return true even if we move to the same spot because we're already there, if we've moved before. So it's basically this, doing this is a no-op. It doesn't do anything. Oh, okay. I just wanted to get that out of the way because that's been bugging me for the last 3 days since I spotted it. But we logicked it out. This is almost done. There are some fails, so it looks like we do have some mess-ups, and our unit testing has caught them. So this is good news in the sense of our unit tests are finding bugs in our game. So we're going to take a look at that. I made some games, but I didn't go that far. I was swamped by balancing the game. Oh, I see. More like game dev-y stuff. I have a hard time wrapping my head around how to balance. For example, if I feel the cooldown for a weapon is too long, I reduce the cooldown, and then the character's leveling up too fast, and you tweak that. It becomes an endless balancing act. And you're not wrong. Balancing is a whole nother side of game dev, right? So let's see what failed here. It said there should be 2 damage numbers of type dot. but we have 4 dot numbers. Oh, so it looks like extra damage numbers popped up when trying to deal damage to this test monster. So that's fascinating. Now, we did recently change a line of code that made more dot numbers pop up. So the question is, all right, let's go back to that real quick, because that's a pretty important observation. So the thing we changed was this line right here. Before, it was a comparison, which means essentially this line didn't ever create a dot number pointer before. Essentially, we were adding, what would this have been? Because if we're not assigning it here, what would it have been? Where does this variable even come from? That's the first question. Am I blind? Oh, I think this is just a local variable. Okay, so basically, the player class has a pointer to both a damage number and a dot number, which means that when these numbers are spawned, they are also tracked for a certain amount of time, because basically there's like this movement where the damage number like scrolls up or down, and during that time it's alive. I guess that's the only reason why I have it as a shared pointer, so it can be referenced by the player until it doesn't need it anymore. Would this apply? But this is only for the player, right? So it doesn't apply to the monster, in theory. Okay, so here's another idea. Maybe the reason why more damage numbers are appearing are because the player is getting hit too, right? Because we modified whether or not a bullet is friendly or not, so maybe the player is getting hit here too. So let's see what happened. This is supposed to give a damage reduction buff to the monster, and then hurt the monster, which is not supposed to be reduced by damage reduction. That's what this test tests. So all we're doing here is we're trying to hurt the monster directly. We're not actually hurting the player here, so it can't be that reason. But it is spawning more dot numbers, which is strange, to say the least. Let me see the other tests that failed. And again, it had to do with dots. It's the dot damage check. So we expected 1, but got 2 damage numbers for the type dot. So somehow there's an extra dot number being spawned or kept in these tests, which is fascinating, right? Oh, I'm looking here now. Look at this. This damage number is non-friendly, but in the player class. Why is that? Shouldn't it be a friendly? Player hurt. Okay. So does that mean it's considered a non-friendly damage number or a friendly damage number? If the player is getting hurt. I guess that's the question, right? Let's see. What was it before? So before, friendly was set to false, and down here friendly is set to true. So I think we did these changes correct. I don't think the behavior necessarily should have changed, right? If we did that correctly. So let's look at monster. Maybe we did it backwards on monster and that's what's messing things up. So on monster, we also have a hurt function, and that will spawn dot numbers as well. Okay, so this is interesting. Here I have non-friendly, but on player I also had non-friendly. So which one is correct? Or are both correct? Or are neither correct? Let's figure out more about what this is supposed to mean, right? So if a type is friendly, what happens? What is this even used for? Let's find all references to friendly. So if it's not friendly, it doesn't recalculate the size. Or it recalculates the size, which means if a monster gets hit and the damage number is for a monster, that number can grow. This feature was added so that when players do some big damage to a monster, it shows up in larger text. It's for flair, but it doesn't show up for player numbers because I believe we just decided we don't care if the number's huge for the player. We don't want it to cover the screen, right? It's not something interesting. So that's what that's for there. And then once again, additional scaling if not friendly. And looks like that's all that it affects. So what else is the test testing? It's testing if damage number type is equal to dot. Okay, so this is interesting. That uses an enum in a namespace. Is it possible I accidentally replaced a damage number type with a friendly type? I don't think so, only because compiler would complain about that. That is one thing we found out compiler would complain. However, it's just interesting suddenly it's doing this because something is doubly triggering before. So here's another question. If I put this back to double equals, does that test pass now? Because technically that number doesn't show up. It's funny because it's almost like the test was written with that bug in mind, and now that the bug's not happening, it's almost like it detected I wrote a test to detect a bug. Like, when it's bugged, it's working correctly. So when it's failing, it's actually... the bug is not doing what the bug intended. So maybe that's what's happening. It looks like it did this no discard thing again. Oh, right, because it disallows it in here. I don't know when this started happening, but this is essentially a no-op, right? Like, if I just comment that out, that's essentially the same piece of code. Let's see if this test passes now. That's very interesting. That'd be hilarious if I made a test work for a bug. Absolutely hilarious. Come on. Let's see it, please. Oh, now we just get an exception. It just breaks. Probably because it's now expecting... Yeah, it's trying to push back the dot number pointer. Okay, so question. We need to find out why the code is like this, when it got like this, what it's supposed to be. All these questions need to be answered now. So we're gonna go to Git, and we're gonna view the history of this file. This is every single time it got updated, so on February 5th, that was yesterday, we updated the damage numbers class to include an add damage numbers method. So let's take a look at the changes in here and see what we did. Okay, so clearly when we made this change, this is when the double equals occurred, the accident, if you will. And as we can see, that's pretty much all it was. We did see it was considered non-friendly. And yeah, that's where we're at. So that makes sense because this is a very recent thing that we couldn't unit test. So that is the correct behavior. None of the other code has changed. But the tests did work before this, that's the thing. So can we go back further to when this test was working? So we made another change to this file on February 4th. We modified the cast info. And that was the only change we did to this file. This was while we were implementing monster spellcasting. We had to change the cast info structure. copyright and name date fixes, and everything from here back was working unit test wise, so we know that's good. So this is very new. Okay. And then well, let's make that change anyway, right? So we know it's supposed to be, this was the intention, just one equal sign there. It's supposed to work. Supposed to is the keyword, right? And then under monster, there doesn't seem to be anything suspicious here right off the bat. Oh, I think I see it. I understand. I think we are duplicating pointers here, so we end up with multiple damage numbers. This makes sense. What happens when you push a shared pointer into a list? Well, it's going to make a copy and insert into the list. So now we have a copy of another shared pointer, which means we have multiple damage numbers, because this number exists inside the monster, so that's one location. It now exists in the damage number list, that's 2 locations. I was literally talking about this the other day. You could do some really stupid stuff with shared pointers because they can exist in multiple places. They won't get destroyed when you want them to, and now we have a bunch of extra dot numbers. That is why. In order to fix this, you need to move this pointer. So I'm actually going to emplace back this and do a standard move on this dot number pointer to move it from its current location to its new location. What this means though is that the dot number pointer is going to be referencing something different. However, it's going to be, I think this becomes undefined behavior. So what we really want to do is instead add the damage number straight into the list, like this, and do that. That way we don't end up with duplicates. But then we have to assign the dot number pointer to whatever instance is created for that list. I believe this is the correct syntax. Why didn't this happen before? Let's find out. Let's see what... Does my reasoning make sense, right? Let's just jump back a few commits to where we know we changed to this. And here... Oh, not here. Damage number changes. Okay. So, why did this work? Or excuse me, why did this work then? Because here, we're essentially doing the same thing, right? We're making a shared pointer and pushing it back here. Oh, I think we found our bug. Add damage number adds it to the list. There we go, that's why that's happening. So we've doubled up on it. So our code actually detected that this bug for us. Thank you, code. So we don't have to do that anymore. We just do this. Add damage number has a side effect. It puts it in the list itself. After standard move, you can call the destructor or the assignment operator. Everything else is undefined behavior. I didn't know you could call a destructor, but that makes sense. I think once you're out of scope, that's usually when that happens, right? Because that shared pointer has 0 refs after that. So I think it will do it on its own. Is that correct? Okay, so we don't want to do standard move, and we don't need to copy another damage number into there. We just need to call add damage number now. So our unit test did find a bug unrelated to us doing friendly calls. It's just we didn't test the code since we did that, so naturally we weren't sure what the cause was. But it makes sense why we had multiple versions of that number, right? Now my question is, should I make this friendly knowing that this is applied to the player? Or do I want dot numbers on players to still get larger? That's an interesting question, but this is more of a This is more in... I guess not. Okay, we'll just leave it like that for now. Because I know damage numbers for the player don't expand in size, so maybe we'll have to see about that. So let's run the 2 unit tests that failed one more time. And we should be good. That should have fixed it. So run these 2. That is correct. End of scope will call the destructor of the shared pointer. Okay, destructor of the shared pointer. Got it. That makes more sense. Thank you. Right. Just waiting for the build. Looks like we won't have time to get to the blizzard today, but we'll work on the other abilities next time now that we've fixed something that's just been bothering me all day today. We didn't do too much, but hey, what can I say? We've made the codebase slightly more readable, but a lot more, you could say, friendly. Got him. Okay, so those passed, we can see here. We have 231 tests passing now, so we can call that a success. All right. I'm feeling very good about that, so let's get this committed. So we added the friendly type flag. Oh, one more thing I want to do that's bothering me is I want to rename the header file from friendly tag to friendly type. That way in the future I don't get confused when I try to find or include the file for friendly type. I'm calling the file friendly type. So we'll commit that as well. So added the friendly type enum and modified all bullet constructors, well, yeah, constructors to handle the new enum. And this is release build 12458. This is also a candidate for the demo version as well. Potentially. Okay. With that big push complete, I'm just going to review that commit because I'm going to annotate that. It might be one we cherry pick for the demo. So let me just copy that ID real quick. And that goes in there. Excellent. So now we're going to bring back the stash we had earlier. Pop and restore. And it's going to try and do some merges. Obviously some things have changed in our code base since then. So operations, oh, I changed to do. Hold on. Let me stash the to do so that I can unstash this guy. Apply and restore staged. So then I can reapply the to do. This has been really motivating. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, what is going on, Git? I mean, you'll find that when it comes down to it, like, all I'm doing when I'm programming is trying to solve problem after problem, right? Everybody, when doing programming, runs into issues. Nobody's perfect in trying to, like, we're not out here trying to pretend to be perfect professionals, knowing exactly what we're doing. We're just making stuff work, however we can. Oh, it's right here. Standard in trailing white space. Very useful. Okay, how about this? That to-do I just did. Let me just pop it real quick. And I'm just going to copy this into my clipboard and then try to restore the other one because apparently it's being dumb. Are we working now? Operation is not valid due to the state of the object. So usually when this happens, I open up a terminal manually and try to do it myself. So I'm just going to open up a terminal inside our projects repository directory, and I'm just going to do git stash pop, I believe. So your local changes to the following files will be overwritten by merge. Please commit your changes or stash them. So it wants me to commit or stash my to-do, which is fine, I guess. I can do that. I wish Visual Studio had better integration with that to tell me what's going on. Oh, and friendly tag has appeared out of nowhere. That's fine. I'm just gonna commit these two real quick. To-do. It's kind of my fault for modifying the to-do right there and then, right? So. And then we should be clean now. Let's try again. Okay, so once again it fails. Let's see what it says now. Okay, that's kind of a big thing. Let me see. So conflict in VCX project makes sense. Auto merging bullet, auto merging to do. Friendly tag already exists. No checkout, cannot restore untracked files from stash. Changes to be committed are blizzard.h, bullet.h to do. Unstaged is those. And friendly tag already exists, so no checkout. The stash entry is kept in case you need it again. Cool. Okay, that mostly does what we need to do. Let's reload the environment because everything changed. Okay, that's fine. We looked at it ourselves in Git. Okay, so these are conflicts we have to resolve. I think we're just gonna... So we want to actually take the incoming because that's the one we did our changes recently in. So let's just take the incoming. And everything else should be okay. Let me take a look. Bullet here does include friendly tag, which I'm actually going to argue we don't want now. So I'm going to delete that change. So we're going to undo the change. Yes. And then we have blizzard.h. So this is where we were at with our code before we started all that refactoring. And so we're finally caught up, so let's just commit everything. Merge with refactor. Okay, so now we're on a clean slate to continue working on our code. Obviously this doesn't compile right now. I was just getting fixated on adding this friendly tag and realizing, oh, well, I want to add the friendly tag thing now while we're at it. So yeah, I don't think Adventures in Listoria includes it, so I have to include it. Include friendly tag. Oh, friendly type. We have both files in here? Uh-oh. I have to delete one. Oh, this is tests. The project file cannot be loaded. Oh, okay. Reload? Thank you. Okay. So... friendly... My guess is friendly type.h exists in my directory, but not in my project solution because I probably overwrote the wrong one. So I'm going to actually delete this. And then I'm going to add an existing file because it's probably just sitting in there right now. There it is. Okay. So it just wasn't in my studio or my solution. But I'm glad this motivated you. That's one thing I try to do is I just try to make programming seem fun and enjoyable and try to motivate others to give it a shot. You never know, you might like it. I find it a lot of fun. So I'm actually really glad to hear that. I'm very happy. So now that that's done, it looks like it's complaining about how Blizzard doesn't exist. Oh, because I was gonna make this emitter, but I had to fix other stuff, so it's complaining about all that. This is all like recursive. Anyway, if I go down here, I should be able to instantiate it now? No? You don't want to? Object of abstract class is not oh, you have to override it because it's like an interface. Ew. I shouldn't call it emitter then. I should call it like emitter. I always name my interfaces with I in front. Just a Java thing. Because I need to know if like I need to override something. So I'm just going to do a refactor of that so it's called emitter. Because if it's an interface, then I would like to know, so I'm not using it willy-nilly like this. Okay, so let's make a new emitter then. While we're at it, let's just implement a new emitter for fun. Can I do it inline is the question. I really only have to include it here, right? So I think yes, I can make it inline, at least for now. We always find out like 2 seconds later we can't inline it, so this is probably going to bite me in the butt. Blizzard snow emitter .h. Okay, so let's try to do an emitter implementation very quickly here. It shouldn't be too bad from what I saw. So I'm going to include emitter.h. Let me bring in the copyright message. Okay. So, looking at this real quick, an emitter class needs to override the emit function, and there's the constructor, so I will do that. So we're looking at class Blizzard snow emitter, which inherits from emitter publicly. These three are going to be inlined. And we have to override the emit function. The override keyword is always optional, but I think it's good practice if you are overriding a function to actually put the keyword in. Okay, so let's see here. A non-static data member cannot be declared as inline. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Yes. And then we're going to be calling the emitter constructor inside of here to populate it. It needs a frequency and a timer, so these are just passed in. I can type, please. Oh goodness. We're not having it right now. Okay. So this thing is going to spit out a bunch of snow. It doesn't know where though, so we have to provide a position. So we're going to provide a vf2d, which means we need to include ocutil geometry 2d. We also need to specify the... So we have a frequency and a timer. So I guess we should just specify like the image and maybe the random size range. So let's provide a standard. So we could store... Let's just store the string here of the image file name and a random range. So standard pair containing the min size and the max size. And we can say both of these are going to be, well, maybe we should do scale instead of size. I think that would make the most sense, because if I call it size, I'm gonna be like, is it in pixels or is it in, something else? Right? That could be confusing. So do min scale and max scale. Scale. I guess I'll just call the variable scale, and that kind of solves that. Scale range. I even put final instead of override. Oh, sometimes I'll do that. Yeah, like, make it final. That way we know we shouldn't be inheriting from Blizzard's snow emitter. This is as far as inheritance should go. I do agree with that. Are there learn CPP equivalents for C? Most of them are like old books, old fart books. If I'm being for real with you. The one that a lot of people recommend is the, I think it's the Book of C. Is it literally called the Book of... Oh, here it is. The C Programming Language, 2nd edition. Literally right there. A lot of people recommend this one. I think you could probably just find it online, like, anywhere as a PDF or something, but yes. There you go. This is just what people recommend. Like, literally, everybody says this is the GOAT, the C book that you need. No questions asked. But no, it's a lot of it is just old because the language is old and it doesn't really change, right? I'll give you another resource though that you might like. One I recommend is Harvard's CS50 course. So CS50 Harvard is a full instructional course. I would personally do the 2024 one, but you can also do 2025. There's a section on AI if you're interested. But anyways, lecture 1 is on C. If you want, you can go through the Scratch one just to get a basic idea of what's going on. But C. He does teach a lot of C here, at least the basics of C, and goes in further from there. So arrays, algorithms, memory, data. There's Python, right? Then eventually SQL, and you get your full web stack. Yeah, it's like a 30-hour course or so. Highly recommended. It's pretty good. I haven't watched the 2025 one in full, which is why I recommend the 2024 one, but I assume it's almost the same content. The only difference I saw in 2025 is they now teach Flask, and they also teach, they have a segment on artificial intelligence. Which I think it's good to be informed, right? Even if you never use artificial intelligence or care about it, it's a college course. You're given a lot of breadth, shown what's out there, not necessarily depth. I think it's a good starting point. CS50. Just in general. But there's a section on C to get you started. Okay, so this emitter... Oh, it's 405. Okay, this emitter will have to wait. I had a lot of fun chatting it up today, so thank you all for joining in. Sorry all we did was a refactor, but it was a good refactor, so we're gonna get into more fun ability stuff tomorrow. I like to do this sometimes. This is fun. Close other tabs. I get to do this every once in a while. Once I've reached like 6 rows, it's very fun. So save. And there's so many tabs that didn't even close the other tabs. Hello? You want to close any tabs? That is not this one? Okay, Visual Studio gave up. It's like, I don't want it anymore. Wow. It actually won't close the other tabs. How about I just do this? Control. Can I do shift? I should be able to do shift. For some reason I can't. Okay. Weird. I actually can't close tabs right now. Okay, Visual Studio. Maybe you need a break. For those of you that tuned in though, thank you for watching today. Hope you enjoyed. And we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.